Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking into a story that, honestly, it sounds almost made up.
It really does.
Okay, picture this. It's 2012. The U.S. State Department gives out its very first Medal of Arts to a Chinese artist, Kai Guoqiang.
Right.
And they don't just give him a medal, they hand over $250,000,
Yeah.
taxpayer money, for supposedly helping diplomacy.
Yeah. Sounds great on the surface, doesn't it? A nice cultural exchange.
Exactly. But here's the kicker. This artist, Kai Guoqiang, he takes that 250 grand
Yeah.
and puts on this explosive art show on the National Mall, right near the Capitol building.
Okay.
He calls it the Black Christmas Tree, and then he blows it up.
He blew up a Christmas tree on the mall with State Department money.
Yep, an exploding Christmas tree
Okay.
funded by the U.S. government. It's almost like satire.
Wow. Okay. So beyond just the spectacle of it all,
Yeah.
what was really going on there? What was the message?
Well, that's what's so wild.
Yeah.
Our research shows that this guy, Kai Guoqiang, even while he's taking U.S. money, he's openly talking about America declining and China rising.
Really? Openly?
Totally. His own name, Guoqiang, apparently means strong country.
Mm-hmm.
And get this, some of his other art involved simulating car bomb explosions.
Seriously?
And he apparently called the 9/11 attacks a spectacle.
Oh, that's disturbing.
And his favorite book, something called Unrestricted Warfare.
I've heard of that. Isn't that the book by those two Chinese colonels?
That's the one. Advocates for using, well, anything asymmetrical tactics, even terrorism against the U.S.
So the State Department gives an award and money to this guy. The irony, as someone apparently noted, was very much on us.
Exactly. So this wasn't just some, random weird art project.
Doesn't sound like it.
It seems like it's a small piece, but a really telling one of something much, much bigger, a strategy playing out over decades.
Okay.
And that's what we're diving into today, what our sources call the 100-year marathon.
On a 100-year marathon.
Yeah. Our mission here is to sort of unpack this whole strategy, look at what China's hidden intentions might be, according to this material, how it's unfolded, and, what it could mean for you, the listener.
And this isn't just some vague idea.
No, the sources are pretty clear. They frame it as China's long-term goal.
Oh.
Replace the U.S. as the world's top power economically, militarily, politically.
And the deadline?
2049, the 100th anniversary of the Communist Revolution.
Wow. Okay. That's quite the timeline. So where does this idea of a marathon come from in U.S.-China relations?
Well, it contrasts sharply with how the U.S. approached China for decades, right?
You have to go back to, Nixon, 1971.
Exactly. Since then, U.S. policy was mostly driven by this idea of constructive engagement.
Constructive engagement. That was the phrase, yeah.
And it was a consensus view. Bipartisan, lasted through 8 presidents.
Yeah. You had big names involved, academics, diplomats, even former presidents backing this.
And the core idea was?
Well, the belief was if we just engage with China, help them open up, help their economy,
they'd naturally become more liberal.
Yeah.
More democratic.
That was the hope. That was the driving assumption.
And that really is what our sources identify as America's first huge blind spot.
Yeah.
A whole era of, well, maybe wishful thinking is the right term.
Yeah, wishful thinking. And one of the biggest assumptions baked into that was that China was definitely heading towards democracy.
Right. People predicted it, expected it.
But it just didn't happen that way, did it?
Not at all. What we saw instead was, well, people call it authoritarian capitalism or maybe authoritarian resilience.
There's a great example in the research, actually. These so-called democratic village elections near Dongguan back in '97.
Ah, yeah, I remember reading that.
The candidates could, talk about how great they were personally.
Right, like, I'm honest, I work hard.
Exactly. But they absolutely could not criticize the party or even criticize their opponents on real issues.
So not exactly free and fair elections.
Not even close. One observer mentioned they just didn't have the heart to tell these candidates what real democracy looked like. It was kind of sad, actually.
And that ties into another blind spot, doesn't it? This idea of China as the fragile flower.
Yeah, that perception was really strong for a long time, that China was, kind of backward, reclusive, maybe a bit strange.
Led by radicals, streets full of bicycles, Mao killing sparrows.
Right. All these images that made China seem maybe weak, or at least not strategically sophisticated.
Which led us to underestimate them.
Profoundly, according to the sources. Underestimating their strength, their strategic thinking.
And even after a major event like 9/11, You'd think that would bring everyone together against terrorism.
You would think. But the cooperation between the U.S. and China, the sources say it was actually quite limited in scope and significance.
So even a shared threat didn't really change their fundamental stance.
Apparently not. It was a pretty clear signal looking back.
This whole era is full of these moments where things weren't what they seemed. And one of the most dramatic is this defector dilemma.
Ah, yes, Mr. White and Ms. Green. This is fascinating.
Takes us back to the early 90s. U.S. intelligence is dealing with two different defectors from China.
Okay.
You've got Mr. White. He's giving credible info, stuff they could verify, warning about hardliners in the government. But his English wasn't great.
Right. And then there was Miss Green.
Ms. Green, fluent English, very optimistic, told him, don't worry, China wants to cooperate. The hardliners are just fringe guys. But she wanted a lot of money, and her intel wasn't really verifiable.
So a classic intelligence dilemma. Who do you trust?
And the intelligence community, which apparently thrives on consensus, they sided with Mrs. Green. They believed her story that China wasn't a threat, that the hawks didn't matter.
Okay, so they backed the optimistic view.
They did, until 2003.
What happened in 2003?
Mrs. Green was arrested as a Chinese spy.
Oh, wow. She was a plant all along.
Seems like it. And the conclusion drawn in the material is stark. Choosing her meant the U.S. ended up supporting the false reformers and abandoning the true ones.
A massive mistake, then.
One that would come to haunt us, as they put it.
That really highlights the perception problem, doesn't it? How easily the U.S. view was manipulated.
Absolutely. And that kind of brings us to a deeper level. China's own strategic culture, which is just fundamentally different from the West's.
Very different. It's rooted in what the sources call a warring states mindset.
Meaning?
Well, think about American history, founding myths, manifest destiny, expanding frontiers.
Right.
China's history for thousands of years is largely about intense rivalry and warfare within fixed borders, constant struggle for dominance among neighbors.
Okay.
And Chinese strategists, particularly the hawks, draw very specific lessons from that period, lessons going back over 2,000 years.
And central to that is?
The 36 stratagems. It's this ancient text, basically a playbook.
A playbook for what?
For how to defeat a stronger opponent, not head-on, but subtly, using their own strength against them, often without them even realizing a game is being played.
Okay, wait. So that exploding Christmas tree.
Suddenly makes a bit more sense, right?
Yeah. Viewed through this lens, it's like stratagem number 6. Make a sound in the east, then strike in the west. No, wait, that's not it. Which one was it?
The source links it to cross the sea in full view.
Ah, hiding in plain sight.
Exactly. Blowing up Western symbols right in front of a Western audience, paid for with Western money.
It's happening out in the open, but the real message, the strategic punchline, is hidden.
Precisely. It's classic deception, according to this framework.
What are some other stratagems?
Well, there's kill with a borrowed sword.
Okay.
Think about how China played the U.S. and the Soviet Union off each other. First, took Soviet help. Then, when it suited them, switched sides and aligned with the U.S. against the Soviets.
So using one enemy to fight another.
Exactly. It wasn't about genuine alliance. It was expedient cooperation to benefit China.
Makes sense.
Then you have things like loot a burning house or take the opportunity to pilfer a goat.
Which sound like exploiting weakness.
Basically, yeah. Seizing economic advantage, exploiting vulnerabilities, benefiting from others' misfortunes. Very relevant to economic strategy.
So deception is really key here, more so than in Western military thought.
Much more emphasized, according to the sources, Sun Tzu, Mao Zedong. It's all about manipulation, making the enemy do what you want them to do, making them act foolishly while you hide your real aims.
And Chinese heroes are often the cunning ones. The manipulators.
Often, yes. It's a different cultural value placed on cleverness and strategic deception versus, say, straightforward strength.
Okay. This is leading somewhere complex. I can feel it.
It leads to this concept called shi.
Shi. Okay, I remember reading this. This is hard to translate.
Extremely hard. It's not just luck or timing. It's more like the underlying potential in a situation, the alignment of forces, the sort of propensity for things to go a certain way.
Like momentum.
Kind of, but deeper. The sources use the analogy of the Force from Star Wars.
Okay, that helps a little.
An alert leader, a good strategist, doesn't just react. They sense the shik. They feel the way the situation is leaning, and they harness that energy, that potential to achieve their goals, even if they're technically weaker.
So it's about reading the situation and leveraging its natural flow.
Exactly. And a key part of using shis is something called wu wei.
Wu Wei. Also tricky.
Means sort of non-doing, but not passive. It's about getting others to do your work for you. Effortless action.
The book used the Tom Sawyer analogy.
Perfect analogy. Tricking his friends into painting the fence for him, that's wu wei in action. Getting your opponent or even allies to advance your goals without realizing it.
And this potential, it can change quickly.
Instantly. It can tip or reverse. So recognizing shifts early is crucial. It's a very dynamic concept.
Wow. Okay, this is a whole different way of thinking about strategy.
It really is. And it all comes together in their iconic board game, Wei Qi.
Wei Qi, that translates as...
Encircling board game, we know it better as Go.
Go. Right. How does that compare to, say, chess?
Fundamentally different. Chess is about direct confrontation, capturing pieces, checkmating the king, annihilation.
Okay.
Wei Qi is about gradual encirclement, slowly surrounding your opponent's pieces, claiming territory, gaining influence piece by piece. It's much more subtle.
And deception plays a role.
It's absolutely critical. You have to mislead your opponent, make them think you're focused over here while you're actually building an encirclement over there. You lure them into positions that seem safe but are actually traps.
Hoping they don't see the bigger picture until it's too late.
Exactly. And the source draws a pretty chilling parallel here.
Yeah.
It says, basically, if you can imagine playing this game Wei Qi without knowing that deception is critical to your opponent's strategy, you'll have some sense of how America is being played by China.
Oof.
It goes on. Americans know nothing of the game's rules. Most of us have never heard of sheet. We don't know we are losing the game. In fact, we don't even know that the game has begun.
That's a really unsettling thought. That we're playing a game we don't even know exists.
It definitely reframes things, doesn't it?
It really does. And it sets up the next part perfectly. How this marathon, this Wei Qi game, has actually been playing out.
Right, through multiple avenues.
And one of the big ones seems to be rewriting history, portraying America as the Great Satan.
Yeah, that's a major theme, especially after the Tiananmen Square crackdown in 1989.
What happened there?
China launched this massive effort to create what the sources call an alternate history.
An alternate history
where the U.S. is painted as this evil twin, constantly trying to undermine China, hold it back, humiliate it, even while in reality, U.S. policy was focused on engagement and helping China.
So a complete inversion of the narrative.
Pretty much. And they didn't pull any punches.
How so?
Even American heroes like Abraham Lincoln, Woodrow Wilson, FDR, they're depicted in some Chinese materials as these evil masterminds who manipulated China for America's benefit.
Lincoln. Seriously.
Yep. Seriously. It's about creating a narrative of historical grievance with America as the perpetual villain.
And how do they push this narrative?
Through the education system, primarily. There's this thing called the Patriotic Education Program, started around 1990.
Okay.
Textbooks got rewritten. They emphasize episodes where the West humiliated China, like the Boxer Rebellion showing Americans as looters. But they conveniently leave out stuff like U.S. aid to China in World War II.
Or Mao's famines.
Exactly. Anything that doesn't fit the America bad, China victim narrative gets downplayed or omitted.
And they control the media tightly too, right?
Right.
To manage this message.
Oh, absolutely. The sources talk about message police. The government controls domestic media, blocks foreign news sites like Bloomberg or the New York Times if they publish critical stories.
Right.
And they pressure American tech companies operating in China to censor content too. It's all about narrative control.
What about those Confucius Institutes? They're presented as just cultural exchange, aren't they?
That's the claim. Promoting language and culture, avoiding ideological content. But
the sources argue that's just not true. They say these institutes absolutely promote the Chinese government's viewpoints and come with strings attached.
what do you mean?
Meaning their funding often depends on not discussing sensitive topics, like the Dalai Lama, Tibet, Taiwan, human rights. Certain subjects are just off limits. So it's cultural exchange, but curated cultural exchange.
Okay, so that's the information, the narrative front. What about the economy? The source called it a capitalist charade.
Yeah, that's a provocative phrase. But the point being made is that China's economic rise wasn't just a natural consequence of adopting free markets.
Yeah, so?
Well, interestingly, China's own Central Party School studies how America became a superpower.
They study us.
Oh, yeah. And the lesson they take, according to the material, is how to follow America's example, but on a faster pace, using things like protecting domestic markets, subsidizing key industries, strategies America itself used historically.
Huh. So learning from our playbook, but maybe not playing by the current rules.
That's the argument. And despite this idea that China became capitalist,
Roughly half of its economy is still controlled by the government through state-owned enterprises, SOEs.
half still.
Roughly, yeah. These aren't just companies, they're national champions, heavily subsidized, getting cheap loans.
And they operate to serve the state, not just make profit.
Exactly. They serve state objectives rather than respond to market forces. It's a very different model.
What about joining the WTO? Wasn't that supposed to change things? That was 2001.
Big moment. And China made promises, right? Phase out the SOEs, protect intellectual property.
Where'd that been said?
Has not kept, according to the sources. Instead, they argue China used its WTO entry to gain access while employing, quote, a sophisticated program of propaganda and espionage to exploit the system and divisions within the U.S.
Espionage meaning IP theft.
Widespread IP theft and cyber espionage, yeah. The material is blunt. China steals technology, promotes Chinese monopolies, and unfairly insulates its state-owned companies from foreign competition.
Are there specific examples?
Loads. There's the case of Dongfan Chung, an engineer caught stealing documents related to the B-1 bomber and the space shuttle.
Wow.
And then there's the cyber angle. One statistic mentioned is 730,000 American computers infested by Chinese zombies. Basically, huge botnets used for cyber attacks and espionage.
730,000. That's staggering.
It really is. And beyond tech, there's the push for resources.
Right. The way keyboard for resources.
Exactly. Influenced by peak oil theory, China sees resources as finite, something to be secured for itself, and, crucially, denied to competitors. It's another layer of the strategic game.
Okay, so information warfare, economic maneuvering. What about the military aspect? The source talks about the assassin's mace.
Shushajian?
Yeah,
That's a cool term.
sounds like something out of a martial arts movie.
Kind of, but it refers to a serious military concept. It's like a secret weapon, a trump card, something that allows a weaker player to defeat a stronger one unexpectedly. David versus Goliath. But David has a hidden slingshot Goliath doesn't know about.
So it fits with the whole asymmetric idea.
Perfectly. The doctrine is literally inferior defeats the superior. China knows it can't match the US dollar for dollar on conventional military power, or at least not yet.
So instead, they focus on,
Asymmetric capabilities, things that give them disproportionate impact.
like what?
Anti-satellite weapons, for instance. China tested one back in 2007, created a huge debris field. Interestingly, the movie Gravity blamed a similar incident on Russia, but the real-world test was China.
What else?
Anti-ship ballistic missiles. These things are relatively cheap, maybe a few $1 million, but they're designed to sink a multi-billion-dollar U.S. aircraft carrier.
A carrier killer.
Exactly. Often developed using, you guessed it, stolen or reverse-engineered U.S. technology.
Of course. And cyber attacks fit in here too.
Big time. Military and industrial targets. Groups like the famous Unit 61398 or others like Hidden Links linked to major intrusions against U.S. interests. It's warfare conducted through keyboards.
And all this capability doesn't just appear, right? There's R&D behind it.
Definitely. The sources highlight the 863 program. Yeah, named after the date it started, March 1986. It's a long-running national program focused on developing key technologies, crucially, dual-use technologies.
Meaning civilian and military applications.
Exactly. Things like biotech, lasers, new materials, aerospace tech. It's about building indigenous innovation capability that serves both economic and military goals.
But despite all this, China's official military budget seems relatively low
Yeah,
compared to the U.S.
right. Around 2.5% of GDP versus maybe 5% for the U.S. historically.
Why keep it low if they have these ambitions?
That's part of the strategy. It goes back to an old Chinese saying, don't ask the weight of the emperor's cauldrons.
Yinging.
Don't openly challenge the dominant power, the hegemon, before you're ready. Don't provoke the U.S. prematurely by looking too threatening militarily. Keep your capabilities developing, but maintain a lower profile. It's patience. It's the long game.
A marathon.
The marathon.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So putting all these pieces together, the history, the strategy, the actions, what are the main takeaways? The warning shots, as the source puts it.
Well, first, the deep dive suggests that the underlying Chinese leadership's distrust of the U.S. is fundamental. It's based on deeply held cultural axioms. It's probably not going to change easily.
So hoping for a genuine change of heart might be unrealistic.
That's the implication. They tend to see U.S. actions even promoting human rights or cooperation through a lens of suspicion as potential American deception.
And meanwhile, the U.S. has often missed signals. given them the benefit of the doubt.
Frequently, yes, missed evidence of growing assertiveness. And while China used to talk a lot about strategic patience,
Yeah.
internal debates within China, according to the sources, suggest a growing feeling that that alignment of forces has shifted
Just shifted in their favor.
in their favor, leading them to become more assertive, to maybe accelerate certain phases of the marathon.
And we see this assertiveness playing out globally.
Definitely. Supporting dictatorships, the material mentions Zimbabwe, Syria, Iran, Sudan as examples. Proliferating weapons, missile tech, even WMD components to rogue states, often for profit.
And undermining international institutions.
Yeah, trying to delegitimize the institutions created by the West, like the UN or the WTO, potentially replacing them with alternatives more favorable to China.
So even phrases that sound positive, like Hu Jintao's harmonious world
Yeah.
or Xi Jinping's Chinese dream,
Aren't necessarily benign in the strategic context. The sources interpret them as code for eventual unipolar dominance by China, a world order centered on Beijing, not Washington.
Okay, that's a pretty sobering picture. So the challenge for America is huge.
It is. The quote sums it up. It's easy to win a race when you're the only one who knows it has begun. Step one is just recognizing the marathon is happening.
But it's not hopeless.
Not at all.
Right.
The U.S. faced down the Soviet Union, right? We adapted then. We can adapt now. And ironically, Chinese strategists themselves study how America rose to power, how it managed to peacefully overtake Great Britain as the global leader.
So they study our success. Can we learn from their strategy?
We have to. The sources propose some concrete steps. First, transparency. Make U.S. agencies report annually on all the assistance they give China. Understand where the leverage points are, how to counter their propaganda.
Okay, makes sense. Know thyself, know thy opponent.
Second, boost American competitiveness. Seriously invest in innovation, R&D, public-private partnerships. Compete effectively.
Strengthen from within.
Third, don't give up on internal change in China. Support the rule of law, civil society where possible. Recognize that internal dynamics matter.
And finally,
This one's crucial and maybe the hardest. The U.S. needs to get much better at monitoring and influencing the debates between China's hawks and reformers.
understanding their internal politics.
Exactly, knowing who's arguing for what within Beijing. The U.S. used to be brilliant at this during the Cold War with the Kremlin, but the sources argue we've fallen behind when it comes to understanding China's internal dynamics. That's a key skill we need to relearn.
So it's not just about military or economics, it's about deep strategic understanding.
Absolutely, because the marathon, as described here, isn't primarily about tanks and planes, not yet anyway. It's about economics, influence, information, cyber asymmetric tactics. It's a long game played across many domains.
Which brings us to the end, and a final thought for you, the listener, to consider.
Yeah.
If this concept of the 100-year marathon is accurate, if it's this deeply rooted, strategic, long-term competition based on deception and patience, and if America continues to not fully recognize the game being played or the rules China's using,
Yeah.
then China might not need to win through outright conflict. They might win simply because the U.S. didn't adapt, didn't compete effectively in this long race. They might win
By default.
a victory without a final battle.
Exactly. So the question left hanging is, now that you've heard this perspective, this analysis from our sources, what will you do with this understanding?